Hey everyone, this is Eddie and welcome to this review of question number 4 of the California bar exam that was administered in July of 2017. And I'm going to look at the questions and I'm going to notice that it has 5 questions. So I'm definitely going to apply time and techniques here. I'm going to answer the question, I'm going to be responsive, and then we'll move on to the next question. Number 1, may buyer join claims for fraud and breach of contract in the same suit against the seller? Discuss. So first, choice of law. We're in federal court located in California, and we are going to use the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, FRCP. And in that question, joint claims. So joinder of claims is the first thing that comes to mind. And the rule there, a party that asserts a claim may join as independent as many claims as it has against the opposing party. So that means that the same transaction or occurrence is not required. And here we have 2 claims. We have one for fraud involving a painting, and then we have a breach of contract / specific performance action that involves real property. So yeah, 2 claims. So again, they do not have to be related, so they both may be joined in the same claim. Conclusion, joinder of claims is proper, subject to the discussion of subject matter jurisdiction. So I answered it, I was responsive. Now let me move on. Here we go. Now let's go on to number 2. Is buyer's allegation sufficient to state a claim for fraud involving the painting? Discuss. So we're under the area of fraud and pleading special matters under FRCP, and fraud is a special matter according to the text of FRCP, and a party must state with particularity the circumstances constituting fraud. And the FRCP does seem to address procedural rights here as opposed to legal rights, so the rule does seem proper. A standard traditionally used is the who, what, when, where, and how guide. So let's see if we can fill in the blanks. So who? So the complaint alleges that the seller committed the fraud. Okay, what? The seller committed fraud in the supposed value. Does it give a particular amount? The answer is no. When? We do not know. Where? Not stated. How? It is not stated. So you have there very vague statements. So the allegations are not stated with particularity. Conclusion, the buyer's allegations are not sufficient to state a claim for fraud. Let's go on to number 3. Does the federal court have subject matter jurisdiction over the suit? There it is, subject matter jurisdiction. All right. So here we are talking about 2 claims, one for fraud and then another one for breach of contract / specific performance. Let's talk about the painting and the fraud claim first. So 2 ways in which subject matter jurisdiction can be met. One is through a federal question, and the other one is through diversity of citizenship. Is there a federal question here? And the answer is no. Now let's talk about diversity. Both parties must be citizens of different states. The amount in controversy must exceed $75,000, exclusive of interest and cost. Do we have different states here? Yes, we have New York and California. That element is easily met. The amount in controversy, so that must exceed $75,000. How much did the buyer pay for the painting? It is unknown, but he is seeking $1 million in damages, and the painting did sell. It was resold at $200. So you can go either way on that one as long as you make your conclusion. So if you said yes, that it does exceed $75,000, and then the court does have subject matter jurisdiction. Or if you said no, you could say, okay, the amount in controversy does not exceed $75,000, so the court does not have subject matter jurisdiction, subject to the discussion on supplemental jurisdiction. So that means that we'll get to it later. Let's talk now about the real property and that breach of contract / specific performance claim. Again, two ways in which subject matter jurisdiction can be met. We already said federal question is not present, diversity, and we already set the rule. Okay, different states, yes, that is easily met. Amount in controversy exceeds $75,000. And here the real property is valued at $5 million. So that element is easily met. Conclusion, the federal court has subject matter jurisdiction. The next question, will the federal court have supplemental jurisdiction over the claim of fraud? So can supplemental jurisdiction be met to allow that claim of fraud? And the rule there, claims must be so related that they form part of the same case or controversy. So we're looking for that case or controversy standard. And let's say a few things about that. So the court in its discretion may decline to grant supplemental jurisdiction. And other things you should know about this is that it is a loose standard and it does have judicial efficiency in mind. There must be some kind of factual connection. And are the facts likely to, or the issues likely to overlap? And you could use that old pendant jurisdiction standard on issues arising from the same nexus or common nucleus of operative facts. Now let's go to the facts. So first we're going to argue that the same case or controversy exists here. So that we have the same buyer and the same seller involved in both transactions, and the seller did cancel the sale of property after being notified of that fraud suit. So that implies some connection. Now we're going to argue against the same case or controversy standard. So you do have their separate valid contracts. So we have different instruments and the dates are different. So you could have gone either way there, and what the bar examiners want to see is they want to see your analysis. So again, you could go either way to determine the answer to that question. Let's go on to question number 4. May the federal court apply California law to decide the breach of contract claim involving the real property? We're going to assume that the federal court has jurisdiction over the fraud claim. And here the Erie doctrine applies. A federal court must apply state substantive law in diversity cases. That's what we have here. An issue that addresses legal rights is substantive and applies state law. Issues that pertain to the judicial process are procedural and apply federal law. So the question here is whether the state created the rights to breach of contract and specific performance, or that the federal government create those rights. And here we have already determined that no federal question exists. And buyer is alleged in breach of contract and seeks specific performance, and those rights are created by the state of California. The federal court must apply California law to decide the breach of contract involving the real property claim. I'm going to answer and I'm going to move on to the next question. Number 5, on what issues, if any, would buyer be entitled to a jury trial? Discuss. Remedies by court are usually split into 2 categories. You guys already know this. So you have your equitable remedies and your legal remedies. Let's talk about equitable remedies first. So equitable remedies are decided by the court. Legal remedies are usually decided by a jury. So here, what are the issues? Are the claims equitable or legal claims? Let's look at the issues. So we actually have 2 transactions. We are going to keep these separate. First transaction, the first issue there is whether fraud is present regarding that painting. And the second transaction, we have 2 issues there. The first issue is whether a breach of contract has occurred. And the second issue is whether to grant specific performance regarding the sale of real property. Let's talk about that first transaction, the issue of fraud. And let's talk about the 7th Amendment. And the U.S. Constitution has preserved the right to a jury trial where the value in controversy exceeds $20. And here the relief being sought is $1 million, or even if you said that the painting was resold for $200, you still exceed the $20. So this will be a remedy at law. The buyer is entitled to a jury trial. Now let's go on to that second transaction. You have two issues there. You have the breach of contract and specific performance. Let's talk about breach of contract for that real property that is worth $5 million. A jury may decide that issue because a legal remedy is involved there. However, a party can waive its right to a jury trial. A court is going to look at the main thrust of the action to determine if it is equitable. And here the plaintiff seeks specific performance, and specific performance is an equitable remedy. So the party will waive his right to a trial by jury. Overall conclusion here, on the first transaction, the court can't afford for redress to the issue of fraud without equity, and the right to a jury trial is preserved. On the second transaction, on the issue of breach of contract and specific performance, the party waives his right to a trial by jury. I hope this helped. I wish everyone the best of luck. I hope you passed. Until soon.